Okay. Hello everyone. So this is Alex here, and today back with another exhibition game number 9. And today my special guest is a former world champion from the year 2008, Mr. Michele Borassi. So definitely all of us know that he's a fantastic player, and subsequently, following his great achievement of winning the world title in 2008, he has also joined multiple other World Othello Championships, and did very good results, including another finals against Yusuke Takanashi. So I believe that was in Rome. So that was something that I found very interesting as well. So yeah, maybe before we begin, I'll just invite my guest to speak a few words. Mikhail? Yeah.
Hello everyone. I'm really happy to participate to this game. Also, I especially like the twist of this game in which I have to articulate my thoughts so that the audience understands what we are doing. So, today I'm not in great shape because I haven't played for a while. So my goal will be that about half my time is spent to find the best move. And that usually when I'm in shape, like when I'm in the world championships, I can think, let's say, 80% of the time on what's the best move. And the rest, usually, it's not that I think about love, it's that I start thinking, for example, about only one option. So there is only one option, and I start trying to understand if that option wins. Or I try to think in general, will I win this game or not? And all these thoughts don't really help you win. They just mess up, and there are considerations that make you lose a lot of time. And so I hope that this time I will use, let's say, 50% of my time in actually deciding the move, so that maybe I change my mind often, because it means that I'm thinking. If I instead many times I just decide the best move in the first 5 seconds, and then try just to convince myself that that's the best move, and that's not the way to win. So that's my goal today. Let's hope I can do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mikhail. So maybe since Mikhail is my guest today, and you've obviously been busy and haven't been playing that much for a while, so I'll give you the option to choose the color of your choice for the game.
Oh, well, for me, I guess it's the same. So do you have any preference?
Uh, okay, for me, I think maybe
Okay,
I'll
let me just close my eyes.
yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. Okay, I'm white.
Okay, okay. So I'll take a seat at black, and
Just
then
did some spam clicking around the seats.
okay, okay. So
Okay, then best
yeah,
of luck.
yeah. Good luck. So okay, let's begin. Let me just click on start. Okay, so I'm playing black, and obviously the first move, not much of a difference rotationally. So I prefer the orientation to be e6 for me. So I'll start off with the first move.
Okay. Also, this is quite easy.
Okay, so Mikhail has played perpendicular. So I think today I would like to play probably starting with more like the rose branch of opening. So I'll just go on to the center.
Okay. With the rose, I always like to play standard. I don't like to do some fancy variations because I feel that the end game usually is easier for white. So
Okay, so yeah, just playing intersecting. So white essentially has played d6, so just cutting into the center of my group of this. So I like to play, a slightly different variation, perhaps to rose branch of openings, and just make a variation over here to the horse opening. So this involves flipping two discs over here on d4 and d5. So I'll play the move to c4 over here.
okay, that's the horse, and I keep following the standard line because I think that with the horse, the white has many options at the beginning, so the position will tend to work. It's harder to choose the best option, but it will have a pretty easy end game based on parity with horse openings. So I think I will be a bit behind in the mid game, and probably I will try to catch up in the end game. So let me just follow the standard line and hope that we go in book as much as possible so that I make less mistakes in the mid game.
Okay, so white has basically just cut into the center, flipping one disc. So over here, I'll prefer to continue to regroup my discs, the four discs on the top and the one disc at the bottom. So I'll just play a vertical cut through D7, which is quite a natural book follow-up sequence.
Okay, I follow again the book.
Okay, so over here, white has just played to continue to regroup, at least from a diagonal and vertical cut perspective. So over here, I like to make a small variation, essentially to regroup my discs and flipping fewer discs as much as possible. So I'll be taking B5 over here, probably a less common but rather more dispersive shape.
Okay, I think this is not the standard, but I'm still in book, and this is the only option.
Okay, so D3 cuts into the center. Yeah, so essentially I would like to still regroup my discs together, so I would have the option of either C3 or C6 or maybe even a loud F5. So F5 is probably slightly more loud and flips more discs, three discs in two different directions. So for now, I'll just keep to one disc and just try to intersect, flipping only the disc that is not exposed to the external squares. So let's go with C6.
Okay, that's good because the other moves I wouldn't stay in book. Here, the best move is F5, and I don't think I have much to say about it. Just central, good, nice.
Okay, so over here I would have a few options, either to play the C3 or F3 or F6. Both, I mean, all of them, the options still within the center 16 and trying to maintain a compact shape. So I would say probably I'll still favor flipping one disc over two discs in this situation because it's still early stages in the opening, and for this branch of openings, it's probably better that way. So I think I'll just weigh between C3 and F3. So C3 probably brings up a more common shape, almost similar like a rose, but it's more towards the horse variation. And then of course probably F3 gives up an easy E2. Probably not what I want to do right now, so I'll just keep it compact to C3 at the moment.
Okay, here I don't exactly remember the move, but I'm pretty sure I have to play F2. So let me think a bit more. I have F2, E2, and then if I do anything else, he can play F3. But maybe also B3 is an option. B3, F3, then I have to play B4, B6. I don't really like this position, so it's between E2 and F2. E2 has a good answer in F2 for black, while F2 looks strictly better than E2. So without spending more time, let me play it.
Okay, so opponent has played F2, so it's a nice compact one disc diagonal cut back to his side of the board, just maintaining that tempo. So yeah, definitely I don't have the opportunity to play E2. So over here, probably the top choices of trying to remain in a very group and compact position is to consider moves like F3 or F6. These two would probably be the top options compared to the rest that might be a bit more loud or more dispersive in nature. And of course, going towards the edge is also an option to F8. So I think among the three options, I would say the one that is most compact. And so if I were to play F3 now, I think my concern is giving up an easy E2 in response. So I would probably prefer to play F6 right now. Also, given the fact that F6 takes away both D4 and D6 discs, so it's probably more likely that the f6 disk gets eventually removed by white so that I can follow up with f3 than the other way around, because if I play f3 right now, there's not much of a chance or a reason for white to subsequently remove f3, and f3 would then poison f6. So yeah, let me just go with f6 then.
Okay, what do we have here? We have f7 or g5. Do we have anything else? I could play at the top, but there is no rush, I think, in playing something like f3. Maybe if I had, c2. Maybe if I had d2, it would be good, but I don't. So let me think. So is it better to play g5 or f7? So in both cases, black has a good response in e2 or has a good response in f3. Now, what's the difference? I guess the difference is that after g5, black there is the threat of playing f6 later, f7 later. Well, if I play f7, I don't have the threat, but I can play c8, which becomes better. So I think there is not that much of a difference, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. After g5, I guess the best is e2. After f7, I'm more afraid of something like e8, but then c8, c7, c8, c7, then what? Then I can play maybe something like b4. Well, if I play... If I play g5, f2, then I really don't have that much. Or also g5, e8. This just looks a bit easier to play. Maybe not better, but at least I have less chances to make mistakes later. So I play f6, f7.
Okay, so white has played f7. So over here, typically f7, this shape kind of builds up to a strong edge to the bottom for white. If black doesn't respond to e8, white can potentially take consecutive tempos to c8, followed by c7, which is a very strong two-tempo edge, and also constructs a very nice, somewhat hollow balance edge to the bottom. So that's very strong for white. And some other options beside considering e8 is e8 c7. I mean e8 c8 c7 is probably the typical sequence that we'll go through if I wanted to grab the edge. If I didn't want to grab the edge, then that would mean taking on the tail end of what white has just done. So white playing f7 and flipping the f6 disk has formed the tail end move of potentially at f3, which could be a potential weak point. So of course f3 followed by c8, and the next move that is good for white would be c7. So it'll probably mean that I need to remove the f4 disk that provides access to c7 for white. So probably f3, c8, and either g3 or g4 are possible options to remove the f4 disks. Okay, so I think for now that's probably my top option. Another more radical option may be g6, g5, h5 perhaps. Probably wouldn't work out as well because it's way too loud and poisons too many moves, both to the top and the bottom. So yeah, I think my top options would still be on f3 and e8. For e2, I probably wouldn't consider e2 right now because if I compare f3 and e2 alone, I think f3 is better than e2 because it's more compact to the center, 16 squares. So I think if I were to go with f3, my resultant disk shape would probably be more centralized. And if I were to go with e8, it'd probably be a lot more h-play based exchanges or battles. So for now, I think I'd like to go with f3, just try to keep it more as a centralized battle.
Okay, I'm not. I feel this is pretty good for me, but this doesn't help me win the game, just saying this. So I have e2, I have c8. Now, the question is, where's the party? I guess the party is at the top now. And c8 looks like something that I want to do later. Because if I do c8 now, well, I just let him play on the right, play an easy move in g4, g3, something like that. Instead, e2 somehow achieves that it makes these moves harder for black. So I think e2 is the only option here. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Okay, I don't see anything else. Let's focus on e2. After e2, what can he do? He has to play on the right. So he will probably play something along the lines of g5. And then I can play something like g6, g4. Yeah, I have to think later about this because it anyway looks better than whatever comes out of c8. So let's play it and think later.
Okay, so I was expecting white to go c8 actually, but yeah, right now white has changed directions to essentially form like a plane shape. And of course, in Othello, it's typical to either form a very compact group or just keep to your side of the board and try to force your opponent to come over to your side. So over here, I have a lone disk that is being split up in f3, the move that I just played. So typically, so over here, the interesting thing is the E column is also entirely white, so there's no way I can make any vertical centralizing cuts. So I'll definitely have to play to the right side. And choosing the most clean move would probably be usually beneficial. So if I were to look at G3, a single direction to this cut, a diagonal cut, um, G4 is a two direction for this cut, G6 is a two direction for this cut, G5 is a straight, to this one direction um, horizontal cut. So I would say probably between G3 and G5 would probably be my top options. And typically in this such a mid-game shape, what you probably want to do is to kind of split up the disk. So if you look at the longest plane or column of disk over here for white, it's a 6 disk over here, and the exposed squares. Probably a cut into the center, leaving a 1 square gap adjacent to what I have on f3, and poisoning the g4 move is typically a shape that most players would go for the mid game. So I think I've also covered this in my mid game lesson before. It's kind of like a post and potentially post and intersect. So I post up with g5 disk and kind of wait for a response on either g6 or g4, and then I'll probably respond with a cross back into either D2 or probably a vertical cut, suppose G5, G4, then maybe a horizontal cut to H4 controls this mini diagonal along D6 and also F4. So yeah, I think G5 would be the most obvious move to follow up right now. So let's go with G5.
Okay, yeah, that was also what I expected. Now, what do we have here? We have G6, we have G4. Usually G4 is a bit better in terms of shape because you don't want the disks on the positions like G6. On the other hand, in this specific position, G4 I think is pretty bad because it gives so many options to black, like D2, like G6, and it becomes really hard for white then. So my thought would favor G6 between the two. Now, the other option is G3 or C2. I think C2 is a bit too early. Because if I play like g6, I don't think he will play d2 all of a sudden, and even if he does, I still have c8. So there is no point in playing c2. Now, what else do we got? We have g3, but after g3, g4, I think my position didn't improve at all, so g6 looks like the best option.
Okay, so white has played g6, and I think Mikel's analysis is fairly on point for sure, making it difficult for me to play. So I think over here I have a few options. So I think the action is still on the right side of the board. It's not something that I can immediately kind of ignore and play something like e2. I mean, sorry, e8, and just completely ignore the right side because right now it's more about regrouping or potentially poisoning some of those moves over there. So almost immediately, I think d2, g3, and g4 are still the key options over here. You want to maintain the focus, and also if I were to play something like d2, one of the considerations is white takes c8 and remove my access to g4. And since d2 removes the f4 disk, I also lose my move in g3 in the future. So may not be what I want to do at the moment right now because if I were to play something like g3 or g4, I still maintain access to go to d2 in the future. So probably g3 and g4 will still weigh heavily or higher priority to try to retain the access and also keep moves that make sense. So I think just looking at G3 and G4, G4 it's loud. It flips four discs in two different directions, but at the same time it prevents C8 from happening momentarily. But it also gives up a quiet move to H4 for white. Probably G4, H4, D2 might be an option to play, or G4, H4, H5, perhaps. H6 and then followed by G3, H2, H3. So that could be an option. So G3, I just try to figure out whether G3 has a beneficial advantage. I don't think G3 has a beneficial advantage because it has the same issue of not preventing C8 and white gets an easy move to C8. So I think I'll just go with G4.
Yeah, that's the move I was most afraid of. So here there is the standard line, like h4, h5, h6, g3, h3, which looks pretty good for black, so I don't want to do that. Also, I'm afraid that after h4, black can play d2. So probably I might want to leave the right hand side as it is and hope for better options in the future. That said, the only moves so if I leave the right hand side as it is, oh wait, there is also an option like h4, h5, g3. That's very loud and it leads to a simple d2 for black, which is not ideal, I think. So I guess that my only option here is c2, even if it's a bit far from the party. Let's see, do I have anything else here? Well, I have b7, b6, b6. Still, it looks too loud, and black has so many responses, like d2 again. So let's try and play c2.
Okay, so opponent has played c2. So the good point is c2 establishes f5 for white and recreates that access to c8, which is a good move for white to keep that edge. So probably a standard counter action to that is to try to prevent by removing f5, but there's no good way to remove f5 besides f8, which is way too loud. Flipping four discs in two different directions in a tightly contested mid game is probably not the best option. And of course, another way is to kind of potentially poison it, like maybe just play around it, e8, anticipating c8, and then either playing to c7 or giving away d8 and f8. So E8, C8, D8, F8 perhaps, and then finding a move up to D2. And since C2 is right now poisoning C7, C7 is no longer that much of a risk for me in that sequence. So that could potentially work out as well. One of the weak points of playing E8 is to open up B4 potentially, because that kind of unpoisons that move. So something to think about there as well. Another option is to just jump to D2, but D2, C8, and then I have a problem playing back to a clean E8. May not be that great. D2, C8. Sorry, D2, C8, C1 probably wouldn't work as well. Is it too loud? So I think slightly my preference is still on E8. So I think in view of time, I'll just probably jump to E8 for now. Yeah.
Okay. So I think here I really like my position because I'm poisoned in many places, but usually black has to unpoison me, and then black just gives me a move, and it's quite easy to find. So in this case, black has unpoisoned my b4, and everything else is poisoned, so I don't really have any other option. And I like this situation because it means that b4 cannot be wrong. So I really like the position I'm in now. So after b4, he can play d2, and then it's a bit tricky to find the next move for me. And the other hand, okay, so b4 might not be ideal. Maybe c8 comes into play, but yeah, it just looks bad. Maybe after, before d2, I can play at the bottom. No, because then, let's see. After, before d2, I can just ignore the problem for now and play something like a6. Yeah, I think I have something, but let's not think about a4. Let's think if there is a valuable alternative. And it looks like there isn't. I don't see anything here. Yeah, so let's play b4.
Okay, so opponent has played b4, which is the move that I just unpoisoned with e8, flipping away e7. So he's capitalizing on that, and at the same time, b4 creates access to kind of regroup over here to d2. So preventing the move probably means taking a3, a5, either one of those shapes, or maybe even a4. That's a bit too loud because I can still retain c4 being as white. So definitely, I still want to play two moves out of those b4 and c4 discs. So yeah, probably not a4. And then poisoning the move, not very likely at this point, unless I play something like e1. Yeah, so probably taking the move itself, d2 is attractive right now. I would probably weigh a3 and d2 equally, as opposed to all the other options. So I think d2 will probably give me a good option to play with because I control the entire the entire third row actually. Yeah. So just trying to figure out if there's anything wrong with this. No way you can cut back unless d2 e1. Okay, I think I'll just go with the simple d2.
Yeah, I think this is the best move, and I felt much better a few moves ago. I guess now we have to really think of some things, because now it's my turn. I have to find a way to get out of this mess of having the 4-column and the D column and the 3-row black, all black. And I don't see any easy way to turn a disc, so neither of those. And yeah, so what do we have? What are the options here? I probably might wait in a6 and afterwards aim for e1 or b6 to flip a disc on the right rows. Is there any other option? I could play d8, but I don't see how it can help me. I could do something on the right, so something like h3, h4, h5, and then I have access to some more moves. On the other hand, h3, h4, h5, I don't get the right access because black can play something that prevents. So h3, h4, h5, let's think a bit. So if black g3, white has c1. So h3, h4, h5. If black doesn't play g3, whatever black plays, I have b3. So this looks really good. Yeah, it looks better than a6. Is there anything else here? I don't see any other move that makes sense. So in the interest of time, I think I have to play it. I don't see any other response. Well, black can always respond in something like h6, but still I find it again because it frees my b6 for later. Let's play it.
Okay, so opponent has played h3. Typically, with a move like h3, the standard response is like what Michele said, to play h4, h5, feed off the unbalanced edge, and then just jump into the pocket space, maybe at g3. And then, like he accurately pointed out, c1, it's a strong move for him to follow up, and at the same time retain access to b3 move if I were to do any of the moves like a3 or a5 on the left edge. So he still continues to maintain his nice shape to the top right. So I think that's something to think about. Another option to think about besides just going for the straightforward h4 is to potentially look at preventing it, maybe with something as drastic as f8 and remove the f6 disc perhaps, since I still have this momentary diagonal control between d6 and f4, so that could potentially be a play that I could look at doing. Just that I'll probably run a few more risks, just forming a kind of a semi-solid wall to the bottom, which could potentially poison a lot of moves to the right side. Or I could play h4, h5, and then do f8 perhaps, and just ignore it, and just wait for white to chase down. But white would then have potentially b3. Another option would be h6 perhaps, h6, h5, but I won't be able to access the pocket space. h6, h5 maybe, h6, h5 maybe e1, chase the excess on g3, but e1 has f1 as well. So the problem with f8 is that maybe f8, c7, b6, and then c8 becomes a very nice move for white. And I wouldn't be able to poison. I wouldn't be able to play h4 first. So I think h4, h5 seems to have to go first before I consider something like f8. Okay, I think I'll just go with the easy h4.
Okay, again, the move looks pretty obvious to me. There is no point in thinking more. I don't think I have any reason to play something like. I mean, I might have a reason to play a6, but yeah, I mean, I just lose by playing a6. I mean, I lose advantage because a6 b3 doesn't show any improvement of my position and improves his position. So let's play quickly.
Okay, so opponent has played h5. There is the pocket space that we spoke of at g3, but committing to the pocket space without being chased along the mini diagonal between d6 and f4 may not be too wise, also because g3 c1 cuts off the excess on essentially removes the f4 disk for black and creates an excess for himself to h2. Um, so yeah, probably going back to the f8 option, just thinking about it here. Maybe f8. No, but if f8, then white probably takes b3 cut into the center. Black, white, black, black, white, black. Mm, let's see. If I were to play a3, feed off b3, a3, b3, c1, perhaps could be an option for me as well. And if a3, c1 happens first, I can take b3 as well. So I'm thinking maybe a3 might be good at this point. But a3, potentially a5 would cut back. 3, a5, chase after the excess. Yeah, right now I'm thinking more that after h5 has that established f3 white disk threatening to b3, I think the action has kind of moved to the left side of the board as opposed to the right side, and there's no immediate danger of white capturing g3 at the moment. So I'm thinking a3, a3, b3, c1 maybe, and potentially a3 he might also play c7 or either a5 to cut from the back door to access g3 with the e5 disc perhaps. Yeah, I think probably I'll just go with a3. It looks like the safer approach to the edge. Excuse me.
This looked good, and yeah, my strategy is kind of working because again, I think I have only one move, namely b3, because if I play anything else, he will play b3, and I have to find two moves else in the bottom of the board, and I don't think I can. So let me just play it and think later.
So white plays b3, continues the poison on g3. I can't play g3 right now. Earlier I talked about c1. So c1 is strong because white has b3. So if white wanted to respond with d1, it would be a fairly poison move. But let me think. Maybe c1, d1, e1, f1, g1, and then a2 potentially. White could potentially go that route and attack the unbalanced edge from the other end. So I think it's a risk, but I think I might still have to play it regardless. If I were to play e1 right now, e1 poisons g3, black, white, black, black, white, black, white, black. Yeah, so I think I'm thinking that c1 is a must play, but just considering e1 as well. E1 poisons the move. E1 f1. No, I think probably c1 gives me more options than e1. If e1 f1 c1 and then d1, I'll probably have more obligation to actually pick up the edge to g1. But if I were to play c1, I'll probably have lesser of an obligation and I still retain the g3 or even the f8 option. So let's go with c1.
Yeah, that's also quite expected. Let's see here. So I have d1, e1, f1, g1. Or something he did not consider is d1, e1, a5. D1, e1, a5 looks really nice because it gives me access to g3. And after d1, e1, he doesn't really have a way to prevent me from playing e3. So I guess that if I play d1, he might want to play g3 himself. But in that case, I can just grab the 3. And I think that my position looks okay. Maybe not amazing, but okay. Well, let's see. Do I want to play a4 now? Well, if I play d1, there is no point in anticipating a4, a5. Because anyway, he can't play on the left. Yeah, he can play a2, but that's not a good option, I think. So, is there anything else here? After d1, so 2 questions. First, do I have any other options besides a4 and d1? Yeah, there is like c8, but it's too far from the party. Okay, so d1 looks great. Now looks the only option that doesn't look great. So d1, e1, then I have the option of attacking the 5 at some point, or just playing a5. I think there is nothing more to... Yeah, I think there is no surprise here. Oh, wait, I already analyzed d1, g3. I don't think there is much more for him on these lines.
Okay, white has played d1. So now I'm just thinking whether e1 is really necessary because e1 is a huge stake to take right now, given that the f6 disk is white because of e1, f1, g1, and then white jumps into the diagonal control very strong and attacks the unbalanced edge that I've established. If I were not to establish the unbalanced edge, do I have any other option? Because e1 it would also eventually poison g3, and g3 has a higher chance of getting removed by white first before e1, I think. Another option that I could think of right here is to just play f8, keep the diagonal control between c3 disk to the f6 disk, perhaps. But I think taking that too early would unpoison c7, like that allows white to regroup to g3, perhaps. Another option that I thought of is h6, h7, and then play a risky floating x square to g2, perhaps. H6, h7, yep. Jump into the risky floating x square. Try to make the board messy and create some opportunities for myself. At the same time, maintaining that same diagonal control of c3 to f6 disk. So that's one option, I think. And also, I think d1 creates that d2 disk that's poison fa5. So I might want to retain that actually. So yeah, let me try to go with... I'm just thinking between g3 and h6 right now, but I like to go with h6. I think probably do the reverse to my opponent perhaps and try to attack an unbalanced edge.
Whoa! This is a surprise. What's the advantage of playing this move? I mean, he had time to do it later. What is this move preventing me from doing? My plan was to play a5 or... Oh, so he's preventing me from attacking the 5. Well, I don't really care because in any case I can give him a 5 on the left and see what happens. I think I have to grab here. Is there anything else I can do? Can perhaps play again a4, a5, but there is no rush. I could maybe try to get the access to g3, but that's really... It flips really a lot. No, I don't think I have any decent move besides taking that one.
Okay, so the plan was to go to g2, floating x square, just to make things a bit more complicated. Maybe g2, g3, g1, perhaps, which is the usual sequence to kind of feed off an edge like that. g2, g3, g1, e1, f1, perhaps. e1, f1, black, white, black, and then yeah. So maintaining this mini diagonal probably helps me a little bit in terms of trying to create some excess. Uh, yeah, I think that makes sense. Rather than going to e1 right now and poisoning all of my moves to the right, I'll just jump into the floating x.
Okay. So I don't agree with. I agree with him that these moves makes things more complicated, but I think it makes things more complicated more for him than for me. Because now I can. I mean, not really attached to this right edge, so I can lose it, no problem. And he has to be careful on how the bottom plays out because, okay, I'm not thinking about the best move here. Let's think about the best move. I can play g3, which gives him a few opportunities at the top, which is not ideal, of course, but it's also not, I say it's not awful. I could, for example, just let him get the edge. What else do I have? I can play something like a4 again, but again there is no rush. And if I play a4, he gets, well, a4, a5, I don't see any advantage of doing it now. And is there anything else? There is c8. But again, why give him a tempo in g3?
Okay, so opponent has played g3 as expected. So I don't think I have. I seem to be running out of options actually. So just maybe between g1 and e1 would be a slight consideration. But e1 gives up a nice quiet a5. So I think just g1 as per my plan.
Okay. So now the question is, do I want to fill the top or not before doing something else? So I could also play b1 at some point. So like a4, a5, fill the top, attack. Let's see. This might be game over if I think about this line a bit better. So a4, a5. Well, maybe before, okay, let's start with e1, f1. Perfect. a4, a5. Attack on the x square. At this point, he can get the corner. I wedge in b1. Oh, but no, wait, because I was thinking that a2, after a2 I have h2, but I don't. So I need to think about something more clever than this. Okay, so what if I play b1 now? He can play something like e1 or f1. But I think he will sacrifice the edge soon, and that's not probably the best option for me. Yeah, this looks tricky. Let me think. I probably have to play on the left. I can't really close him by playing something like e1, g1, whatever, attack, and so I have to open the bottom left. Let's see how I can do it. First, I would start with a4, a5, so that it's not poisoned. And I get a disc on all the diagonals. Wait, what if I do a4, a5, then I play the x square in g8, for example? Well, after a4, a5, the bottom left is odd, so I will have to play to the bottom left anyway. So probably it's a good idea to play it now. A4, a5. Oh, wait, so he has also... So I know I have to play on the left, but probably I want to play if e1, f1 first, because if I don't, he can play e1 himself. Well, do I care? If he plays e1, well, he has now a nice... Yeah, I think e1, f1 should simplify a bit the matters and probably gives me an advantage. Yeah, let's play it first.
Okay, so opponent has played e1. So I think f1 should be a forced move. I can't play f8, right? If I play f8 or a2, probably lose tempo either way. Yeah, I should probably just maintain the diagonal cut for now. If he cuts in f1, a4, a5, yeah, I think in view of time, it's probably better for me to go with the expected or sequence. So I'll go with f1.
Okay. Now, do I want to play a4, a5 before doing anything? I think I do, because if I play the bottom, something like c8, I don't have a4 anymore. And I want all these nice cuts of the diagonals. So let's play the pair, and then let's think.
Okay, so opponent has played a4 as expected. So a5, probably just defending the edge. He can't attack the x square right now because I'll have parity to the top left. So most likely I anticipate c8 continuation or somewhere to the bottom left. Okay, let's take a5.
Okay. Now the question is, should I fill the top left corner before going to c8? So if I fill it, then I can play c8. Or I can wait and fill it later. So if I fill the top left, yeah, there is not the swindle I was hoping for on the top left, in the top right. So if I don't fill it, whatever I do, he has a good move in a2. That's why I wanted to fill it. But so if I play something like c8, a2, then I have... I also don't have any access on the diagonal to play a6 after his a2. And I will not see it like before the end of the game. So if I fill the top left, though, he gets quite a few discs. And we don't like it. But then let's say I fill the top left. I play c8. Then it's his turn. And so he has to play... so c8, c7. Then I have b7. And I guess I get a few discs from there. Yeah, let's fill the top left first and see how it goes. I'm kind of controlling the game, but it's in these positions it's very easy to play a forced line to force your opponent into winning. So I want to make sure... No, but let's play the forced line then. Yeah.
Okay, so white has played to b2. So usually, the lead diagonals to me, I always describe it as the 5th and 6th edges. So it's kind of initiating and giving you the edge in some way in terms of the lead diagonal as well. So if you don't take it it's gonna be quite detrimental to your tempo. Like for example, if I were to play f8 now and I do f8 and then he just do g7 and the game is over. So I have to retain that excess either way. So I'm just going with the corner just to keep that excess. So essentially the game is kind of out of my control. So yeah, let's see. Hopefully I'm forced into a line that could potentially have enough discs. So let's go with a1.
Okay, this one is forced.
Okay, so over here, since I've already occupied a1, I'm not too sure whether a2 is the immediate forced move for me, or can I look at f8 perhaps? F8. I think f8 could probably open up nice moves to either c8 or c7 that would give me some issues potentially. And also creating an odd region to the bottom right is probably not great. But if I were to take a2 right now, then followed by maybe c8, a2, c8, maybe c7, and then b8, f8 perhaps. Yeah, probably have to think this through a bit. If I were to retain the poison and just keep those discs, black, white, black, white, black. Yeah, that probably wouldn't work out. F8, C8, F8, C8, D8, G8, followed by B2 gives a quiet move to C7. Probably not what I want. So I think I'll have to go with A2.
Okay, I'm not sure why he was thinking about this move because both lines look more or less the same to me. Anyway, let's think about myself. That's not his business. I think here I have only one move at c8.
Okay, so c8, typically c8, such a move, one square gap. Usually we play d8 in response if there is any disc along the diagonal between a3 and e7, because it will be a poison move to f8 for white. But in this case, because there isn't any disc along that, giving d8 will just simply mean a very easy quiet move for white. So obviously c7 would be the expected move. At the same time, I have access to prevent, I have access to actually take up f8 myself. So I'll just go with c7, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So here I have a few options. I could play a very loud move at b6. I could play b8. So if I play b8, how will this evolve? So b8, he will play probably, he might play either f8 or g8. So f8 looks quite safe because f8, g8, h8, g7, then play on the left, and I think that I have parity. I have I have the bottom left corner. I think it's a win. So let's see, b8, g8. b8, g8. I can play b6, and then it's his turn. Looks like I get many discs here, so I think this should be a win.
Okay, to be honest, I didn't quite even consider g8, but yeah, I think it's a move that Nakajima also considers at times. For me, almost f8 is like an immediate thing to play. But yeah, now that you mentioned g8, I'm just taking a quick look at g8, wondering if that works out for me. If I play f8, I close off the kind of 5 square region and the 1 square region to the bottom left as a 6 square region. Perhaps f8. I don't have parity for sure, so that's out of my hands. Probably one of the weakness of black. So f8. If I take f8, I think f8 would probably be my go-to default move, given that I only have 80 seconds left. F8. Would that work out? G8 seems a bit too crazy for me at the moment. Probably something worth looking at. I'll go with F8 for now.
Okay, well, let's see. I probably need to count, so I will shut up for a moment. Yeah, from a quick count, G8 looks the best. Wait, let me think. I also have B6 to analyze. Should have analyzed it before. Okay, so B6, A6. Then what? Then I'm pretty dead. Okay. Now, so A6 is not an option. And A7, I don't see any point in doing it. So that's, yeah, let's try my G7, G8, G8.
Now that I'm looking back at it, I suddenly feel like maybe I should have done G8, or maybe your consideration for G8 was right. Because I don't have a tempo, I don't have the access over here to D8. So I'm kind of isolated for parity. So the only option for me is to grab corner, try to maximize the discs.
This is very quickly.
Yeah. So I think for now, if I were to play H2 immediately, I won't get the benefit of that position to H2 or that exclusive access to H2. So I have to play definitely B7 first to create that C7 disc to try to maximize more discs. So I'll probably go with that.
Okay. So here I was thinking about A8, but now also A6 looks good. Let's see. If A6, A7, I have the swindle. If A6, A8, I play D8. D8 he has to play on the left and he doesn't flip in the diagonal. I don't have much time, but this looks like it's the best.
Okay, so I wasn't really expecting A6, but obviously I can't play A7 because I'll give up the corner, and also I don't think I have a nice access back, and he has a nice B6 move. So my only options are to get the corner, black, white. Okay, I'll go with the corner first, and then just follow up by this maximize of this.
Okay, so he doesn't flip diagonally with this.
Okay, I missed it.
Oh,
good game. So I think
very good game.
yeah, very nice game. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I'm not too sure whether I should have taken the diagonal first. Would that have been more disc? But yeah.
Let me see. Let's see the history.
Yeah.
So you mean where do you mean the diagonal first?
Instead of taking the corner first, instead of taking the corner first to A8, I take H2 first. Not too sure if that's.
I think if you play H2 first, I would flip quite a few discs on the D column.
Yeah, and you would also have like a strong mini diagonal cutback, I guess. Along. Yeah. So I don't think that would be enough either way.
You could get quite a few discs.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was super tricky.
Yeah. But I think it was a very nice game. I didn't really feel I was in control all the time. So for sure, it felt more like you were in control for most of the game. So definitely, even though you were away from the game for quite a bit, but a world champion is still a world champion, very strong. And I like the way that you thought about the analysis in the mid game. I think it's fairly looking far ahead, probably further ahead than what I usually look at. So that's very impressive and also a great learning experience for me. Would you like to add a few more words, Michele?
Yeah, so I want to thank you again for hosting me on this. It was really a funny game. and I really liked how the game developed because the end game was pretty tricky. I hope I had more time in the end game just to explain a bit more my thought process. I just took many things for granted because I didn't really have time to analyze all the options.
Yeah.
But I think it was a great experience, and I'd be very happy to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, maybe if I have the opportunity to arrange, you with other guests, perhaps would be fun as well. Yeah. So I think Ben was actually asking me about this game and when it would occur, but I told him the timing, but apparently he didn't come and join in. But maybe we can probably arrange a match between you and Ben as well, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 a.m. in the US.
Yeah,
so
yeah, it's definitely hard.
I can understand why you didn't join.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me in this session. And, I hope the audience also enjoyed. And I think you're definitely one of the few guests that have explained the thought process very well, probably even better than myself, even though this is like the first time that you're experiencing this game format. But I think it's very impressive, and I had a very good experience playing this game with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And have a wonderful rest of the weekend.
Yep, you too. Thank you, Mikhail.